Today we're having a very swift look at Shelter Point Distillery's 2016 inaugural run. Now this is a Canadian whiskey, 100% Canadian, and they call it Artisanal Single Malt Scotch. And yeah, using 100% Canadian barley, and if I'm really honest, there's not a lot else I know about it because it don't communicate a lot on the pack, which is kind of cool. You find out, it's a sense of discovery and all that. What I do like though, and aside from having a really nice label up here, as you can see, I'll move my bearded face out of the way so you can have a look properly, is a good glass stopper. Fantastic. What you can probably just about make out on there is the Canadian maple leaf. Symbol of Canada, and of course an icon now of this distillery as well. So, taking a look at the actual whiskey itself, I'm a big fan of Canadian whiskey. I think it doesn't get nearly enough airtime as it should due to various trade restrictions and all that kind of stuff. But we won't go into any of that political detail. But you have Crown Royal and you have some of the like Canadian Club. But once you get past them into some really, really interesting things like Dillon's Distillery out in Ontario, and obviously awesome name as well. But then you look at these guys at Shelter Point, you even look at 40 Creek and various others that you just don't see in the UK. When you do get to try them, unfortunately I was over there last year or the year before, and it was superb, trying all these phenomenal Canadian whiskies that you just don't get to try in the UK yet. Hopefully very, very soon. Anyway, on the nose, very, very sweet. So akin to like those boiled, like pear drops, those like boiled sweets, those hard sweets you used to enjoy as a kid and potentially break your bloody teeth on. There's a rogue banana note in there as well, like somewhere between the foam bananas and the overripe, kind of mush it on some toast for breakfast type bananas. A nice malty note in there as well. And then an undercurrent of quite sweet fresh apples. Or maybe that's actually a bit more orange zesty, and now I'm spending more time with it. Well, really good nose, lots of depth, lots of flavour, and quite diverse in its notes. Ooh, very good. Maybe a little bit of toffee in there as well. The palate itself is actually incredibly fruity. It's quite alive. With lots of oranges, apples, pears. What else is going on in there? Vanilla hints, some cinnamon spice, definitely. There's a rogue spice note there. Maybe a bit of crushed black pepper. Definitely spicy on the finish, which is lingering quite a bit. That cinnamon note is hanging around a little bit. You know, it's not the thickest palate in the world. It's not the most complex, I don't think. Not the most kind of world-beating palate of sorts. But there's something really interesting there. And it's a very nice sippable whiskey. I think it's at 46% ABV. And a very good flavour. I think the nose probably outweighs the palate somewhat. The palate gets a little bit thinner than I'd have liked or wanted or expected, so to speak. But I think it's a really fascinating example of a really, really interesting new to market whiskey from what is going to be a fantastic whiskey producing. Well, obviously they've been producing whiskey for decades, century probably, but a global powerhouse in whiskey production. Once all these brands kind of mature a little bit further and all the trade deals get in place, and you know, we get to a point where Canadian whiskey is a set of amazing craft distillers on our shelves and not just two relatively generic whiskies. That granted, one expression won World Whiskey of the Year a couple of years ago, but the reality is there's so much more Canada has to offer and already has in bottle, as you can see, that we're just not getting to experience. So once we do, this is going to change how we think about Canadian whiskey for sure. Very nice. One to spend time with, but also not to labour over. And that's crucial, knowing which whiskies to sit, chill, ease into your night with, and those just to sip away and not even think about. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but in a way that you're going to enjoy it, you're going to actually love every single sip, but you don't need to overanalyze it, you don't need to work out what the nose, palate, finish, all that kind of stuff is that I go into. Just sit there, enjoy the thing, and see what your friends think. Cheers.